downloader, and a very warm welcome to Chazingdra Chats, the show where we take a stroll through the life stories of people in the Pokémon community, discovering the 6 Pokémon on their dream team along the way. I'm Charlie Merriman, merry by name, merry by nature, otherwise known as Chazingdra, a host and commentator for the Pokémon Video Game Championship Series, and a content creator, and this week as every week, I very much hope my guests and I can make your day merry, because I have the pleasure of being joined by the one and only Aaron Cybertron Zheng. Aaron, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Glad to be here and also glad to chat with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's been a long time coming. First of all, thank you from me for getting up at the crack of dawn to record this. It's like 7 in the morning where you are, so thank you for working with our insane time difference. And yeah, we'll be maybe taking this episode at slightly a faster pace than I might do ordinarily, just because we had some tech issues, as is always the way, right, Aaron? But we're here now, and we are ready to get going. And Aaron, I don't know if you recall this, but I'm about to send you a picture into our Discord chat, so you'll be able to see it, and I'll show it on screen. We have actually met before, and that was at the World Championships in 2022 in London.
Wow, no way, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Very strange. I was like, it's before I was casting. I was barely, I was there as a spectator. I was just dipping my toe into getting involved in the community. And of course you were there in your analyst role. And I'm sure you had queues of people asking for photos with you. But it's just very surreal right now, 3 years later, to be here talking to you today.
Well, dude, we are very, very lucky to have you, of course, on the official team. It has been such a pleasure watching you and on the broadcast. You've been absolutely smashing it. And so I'm looking forward to the day we get to, eventually work together.
Thanks so much, Aaron. That means a huge amount. And likewise, it will be a dream come true from my end. Anyone who's not so familiar with you, can you give a brief introduction to yourself?
Yes. Hello. My name is Aaron Cybertron Zheng. I do a lot of stuff in the competitive VGC space. Started as a competitor way back when VGC basically first became a thing in 2008. So this was in the juniors division. Competed for a really long time, really from 2008 to 2017. Won 5 regionals and 2 nationals, mixed between masters and seniors, and then got top 4 at Worlds in 2013, top 8 at Worlds in 2012, and then started making YouTube videos trying to teach people how to play competitive VGC in 2014. Became a commentator for Pokemon in 2016, and since then I've kind of juggled a bunch of different roles. These days, this season, primarily focusing on commentary, but still compete a little bit every now and then, and of course, still making YouTube content as well. So, been involved in the competitive Pokemon space, the VGC space, for now 17 years, which is really crazy to think about. I've basically grown up with this game. I absolutely love it. I have no plans on stopping anytime soon, and it's fun to do a lot of different roles in the space.
Incredible, yeah. I hope that you've got big plans for your 20th anniversary. How you're going to celebrate.
I haven't thought about that, man. That's crazy. Yeah. Wow. I got to give it some thought.
2028, we'll have our eyes on what you've got cooking up. Well, thank you very much for that, Aaron. And without further ado, shall we do this?
Let's do it, man.
All right, looking forward to it. So, what we're going to start off with here, you've structured your topics chronologically, and that'll be fantastic for getting the overview of your life story. So we're going to start appropriately with childhood.
All right, let's just get into it, man. Childhood. So I was born and raised in Queens, New York. My parents are immigrants from China, and I was very lucky, I think, to grow up in a really great environment, both from my parents as well as from like a neighborhood perspective. We grew up in this neighborhood called Fresh Meadows over in Queens, and my parents are really hard workers. I think they always prioritize education for my brother and I, and so I was very fortunate enough to go to a really good public school that I tested to get into when I was young. And so, I didn't really know much about video games, didn't really know anything about Pokemon. And it's funny, I actually attribute my classmates to getting into Pokemon because this is in like 3rd or 4th grade. I was around like 7, 8, 9. And all my friends had Game Boys, but my parents didn't buy me one. And everyone was playing, I think it was like probably Ruby or Sapphire at the time. And I didn't know anything about Pokemon, but basically I was like, I want to play Pokemon because all my other friends are playing Pokemon. And so eventually my parents are like, okay, we'll buy you a Game Boy. And Emerald was actually my very, very first Pokemon game. So a little bit late to the scene, not Red, Blue, not Gold or Crystal, or Ruby and Sapphire. But then my neighbor actually lent me his Crystal version. And then so I, after playing Emerald, played the older generations afterwards. But it was great. I think when I look at the earlier days of life, I made really good friends from school, and those friends are actually still some of my best friends today. Like, I was in this class from first grade to fifth grade. It was all basically all the same people, and we stuck together throughout all the years. And yeah, those are still some of my closest friends today. And there are a lot of summers where we would actually just spend in each other's houses, like playing Pokemon, which I thought was really, really fun. But, before discovering the world of competitive VGC and Pokemon in around 2008, did a lot of different things, as a kid. Like, my parents would take me to swimming classes and competitions and chess competitions, and I wasn't really particularly good at any of those, but then I found Pokemon, and it really took off from there.
Wow, I mean, as with all my guests, there's just so much to unpack from every single thing that my guests say, but I'll try and limit myself. I guess the first question is, given how focused your parents were on education, how do you think they felt about you wanting to get into Pokemon?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm like super, super grateful to my parents. I think they, especially as, immigrant parents who very much knew nothing about video games, they were actually really supportive of it from day one. I think my mom basically was like, look, as long as you like do well in school, we'll let you like do these Pokemon things as well. And the story I always tell is I was always really hyperactive as a kid. Like, it was really difficult for me to stay still. I got in trouble in school a lot. I was always talking a lot. And I actually started playing competitive TCG first because VGC didn't even exist back then. So this was in 2007. And I got into Pokemon or learned about competitive actually when Journey Across America was the thing. So it's funny, you were talking about like 20th anniversary. Well, Journey Across America was like the 10-year anniversary of Pokemon. This is back in 2006. And they did a tour across the entire US where they would like go to malls and like celebrate Pokemon. So it was really cool because like the main appeal for me and my friends was you could go and get like a really rare Pokemon, right? Like they would give you like a Mewtwo or a Celebi or whatever. I actually don't remember the specific Pokemon, like maybe Celebi wasn't one of them, but either way, it was like you would line up for hours, and then through a link cable, they would actually trade you one of these really rare Pokemon. But that's where I learned how to play competitive TCG, or learn how to play TCG, and then I looked it up, and I was like, hey guys, there's like tournaments for these things. So my mom like took me to a tournament, and she was like, I've never seen Aaron stay so still and stay so concentrated in like anything I've ever taken him to. And then so I think that's where my parents realized like maybe this is a good thing for him. And so they were on board with it since day one, which is really, really like I feel really grateful for, right? Because I was literally like 8 years old at the time. I'm sure it helped where like when I went to the first VGC event, this was back when it was called the Video Game Showdown. In 2008, there were only 2 like regional level events, one in New York, one in I think it was LA. 128 players capped for juniors and senior/masters, and I got top 4, and then I came back home and I was like, oh, so I just won a free trip to Orlando for the World Championships for like a week. And my mom was like, what? And so I'm sure that definitely helped a little bit because I think if I, but I'm sure even if I wasn't performing super well, my parents would have still been on board because they thought it would be good for me. But I think, naturally the scene was smaller back then, and I was fortunate enough to do pretty well in the first few events I was playing in. And so I think then they were really on board. But they've been supportive since day one, and I can't think... Like, I always think about how different my entire life would be if they were just like, no, you can't do this, because I'm sure it would have turned out very differently.
Yeah, my goodness. Wow. My final question on this point is, when you were playing through Emerald and the games that you played, was it always the battles, the competitive side, that drew you the most?
That's a great question. I think no at first, like... Especially because back in the older gens, especially like Gen 3 and before, like battling in itself wasn't even like the easiest thing, right? Especially because you needed link cables. I think like Gen 4 was a big unlock where now you could do like Wi-Fi battles. But it was more just, I don't know, like Pokemon as a game just felt really cool. Like I loved just the idea of capturing all these different cool rare Pokemon and trading with my friends in particular as well. But I got into competitive because I think then we like beat the games, and then we're like, there's not really much more to do, right? So then we were like, I wonder what else you can even do in these games, and then realize, oh, there's actually a whole competitive scene. There's like different ways that you can play. And so it was definitely not about competitive at first, but then I think at some point once you like beat the games, you always wonder like what else is out there in the world of Pokemon, and then realizing that there's a competitive scene and there's ways to like actually play the game at a competitive level, I thought was really cool. So to answer your question, like no, it wasn't about competitive until like I feel like I kind of exhausted all of the normal things you do within the games.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's something I'm sure we're all familiar with. And I guess with Emerald as your first game as well, the Battle Frontier is looming there for you, the Battle Factory.
Yes.
That post-game content is so wonderful for the competitive side of things. Well, brilliant. Okay, from there, talking of Pokemon, it's now time to introduce the first Pokemon that's going to be on your dream team. And as a reminder, everybody, the aim here is not for Aaron to build the most competitively viable team in any way. It's just the Pokemon that have been the most special to Aaron over the years. He can define that for himself in whichever way he wants. And I have no idea what they are. He's decided on them in advance. So, Aaron, tell us what's going to be Pokemon number 1.
I think in the spirit of us talking about Emerald, I've got to go with Swampert here because Mudkip was my first starter, and Swampert was the very first Pokemon I remember getting to level 100. And I felt like, especially back in the day, I was like, wow, this is a big deal. Like, I grinded for hours, and then I used, like, the remaining rare candies that I had. And nowadays, it's, like, so much easier to get the resources in the game. But back then, I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like, level 100 is the cap. And I put a lot and heart and soul into the Swampert and trained it all the way up. And so, yeah, I have a lot of love for the original Swampert. And I didn't bring that exact Swampert to the World Championships in 2015, but I did use Swampert at Worlds in 2015. And so it also holds a special place in my heart.
Oh, wow. Swampert, yeah, we're always going to have a big connection to our first partner Pokemon. Can you recall at this point, or maybe it's one of those indefinable things, but what was it that spoke to you most about Mudkip as opposed to Torchic and Trico?
I think it was really cute. And I always love the water types as well. I don't know.
Yes,
I feel like when I think about, what type would I be? Like, water is always, like, cool, calm, collected, you know? And so, yeah, I think it was a combination of it being really cute and then just, like, liking the typing as well. But, yeah, that's basically it. You know, it was 8-year-old Aaron having to make a decision.
Yeah, fair enough. I also have an affinity for the water first partners and the ones that are cute. I remember you saying in videos past that Mousehold is your favourite Generation 9 Pokemon.
Yes,
which is
so
the same
awesome
for me. I can't. It's just irresistible. Just a little family of mice that support each other and love each other. It's yeah. Wow. Is that a theme in the Pokemon that tend to be your favourite? Is there always an element of cuteness to them?
I think so, yeah. I mean, but there are so many awesome designs. I just think the cute ones are just like, I'm like, oh, it's so cool that they're so adorable, but they could be so deadly as well. Like, there's nothing like cracks me up more than thinking about commentating the first regionals of the season with Rosemary, and like Mousehold wins the tournament, and like we're just counting down the population bombs, and I'm like, here's this adorable thing just absolutely destroying with 10 hit population bombs, getting one hit knockouts left and right. It was so fun to watch.
I just love how Mousehold also, in terms of competitive, can be supportive or offensive with Population
Bomb.
But it also has Follow Me, so I love that flexibility. But yeah, it's signature move Population Bomb that can hit up to 10 times, and very hard to avoid. Well, anyway, that's Mousehold, but Swampert, welcome to the team, and if you're enjoying this chat with Aaron, everybody, please do like and subscribe. Would mean a huge amount. It does go such a long way and far further than it might initially seem. But we've got so much more conversation to have, so let's continue from childhood now into middle school.
All right, so middle school. This, I think, was very transformative time in my life. So at this point, you know, I just found out about competitive Pokemon, started going to tournaments. You know, my first TCG and VGC events were around 2007, 2008, so I was just finishing up elementary school. And in the end of 5th grade, so at the end of elementary school, right before I'm going to go to middle school, I get into this nonprofit program that helps basically low-income students get into private school in New York City. I think, education in New York there's a huge spectrum. There are really, really good public schools. There are also, you know, some public schools that are not very well funded. There are also really, you know, excellent private schools, but the opportunities to go to these schools are really difficult, especially if you are coming from a position of like not being able to pay for it, right? And now these schools do offer financial aid, but it's also incredibly difficult to just like get into any of them. And so I didn't even know anything about private schools in New York. Like I was in this like public school magnet program with a lot of my friends, and then this opportunity came where I tested to get into this nonprofit program. It was called Prep for Prep. Program's really interesting because you essentially go through like 14 months of, you know, quote unquote training. You're taking classes your entire 5th grade summer, your entire 6th grade school year on top of your regular schoolwork and your 6th grade summer. If you complete the program successfully, you get a basically like full scholarship to go to a private school in New York City. And I mean, the program is life-changing, right? The idea is to really help give educational opportunities to students that otherwise like would not have access to these schools and these institutions. And so I didn't really know anything about it, but I got into the program, and then I was like, okay, I guess we're doing it. So 5th grade summer, that was when I first started playing the VGC, and basically I qualified for Worlds that year, actually, both in the video game and the card game, which is really cool. On top of that, I was still doing this program, and so yeah, they like had buses like come to your school come to your house, and you would go basically take classes like from 9 to 5 all day, come home, do homework, and then rinse and repeat for an entire summer. So it's kind of crazy to go through because it's like most kids, you're like 10 years old, elementary school summer, you're like playing outside and you're maybe playing video games, but meanwhile I was like going to school basically during the summer, which was really intense. And one thing about the program is like not everyone completes it, and so I think it's about like 75% completion rate, and so it was stressful, right? Because it's like, if you don't do well enough, you might get kicked out from the program, and they're dangling like a life-changing opportunity in front of you, and so definitely didn't want that to go to waste. But at this time, little Aaron was also just so into Pokemon. Like, he had just discovered the world of competitive Pokemon. All I wanted to think about was like playing in tournaments and building decks and building teams and just anything related to Pokemon. And so it was definitely hard to balance. And then that summer I went to Worlds, and it was actually a really interesting dilemma because I qualified for TCG. I also qualified for the video game. Basically, they were like, hey, you have a free trip to Worlds if you played the video game, right? Because that's how you that's where you won your travel award. I really wanted to actually play the card game that year, but I was like, well, like this financially, it's, just much, much better to play the video game, right? I don't want to make my parents pay for a trip when I already have a trip offered to me. The video game showdown, like Worlds that year, was single elimination, best of 1, close team sheet. So I roll up, and round 1, I lose in like 10 minutes, and that was it. That was my first Worlds experience. No. And I was like, wow, the card game tournament hadn't even started yet. So I was like, I wonder if I could just like register and play in it. And I was too young to even like, I don't know, make decisions. And so basically, like, maybe there's a world in which that happens, and then I just, like, play TCG Worlds instead. But then, there was no dice. And then so I just, like, that was it. That was my first Worlds. But then I knew, I was like, okay, this is fun. That was not a fun experience, but this is a cool, like, overall experience. Like, getting eliminated from Worlds, not so fun. Worlds itself, though, really cool, especially as someone who, like, basically never stepped on a plane before. And actually, I'm realizing now, like, one thing that's key to the story when you were asking me about my parents is in 2000, like, this is the year before, in 2007, I was going to go to TCG, or sorry, this is 2008, I was going to go to TCG Nationals, and my flight got canceled, and my dad, like, decided to make the 10-hour drive from New York to Columbus, Ohio, literally, like, the night before Nationals/Internationals, and we showed up, like, 10 minutes before. And so talking about parents, I was like, there's like truly, that's like one of the most special things like my dad has ever done. And it was like a crazy decision in retrospect. Like, he worked so hard, and he was, naturally tired as well, but he saw how disappointed I was from like not being able to go to Nationals. And that was like my first time, potentially getting on a plane to even compete in a tournament. And so, kind of going all out order here, but I think that's a very important piece of the story here for me because I think it shows how supportive my parents were. And it's like, just absolutely insane, like, to think about. And so, all of that is to say, like, jump into middle school, and now it's, like, 6th grade. I'm really interested in Pokemon, but I'm, like, in this, like, extracurricular nonprofit program, and then I'm taking classes, going to normal school, and then also doing additional classes from the program on Wednesdays and Saturdays. It was honestly just, like, a really stressful time, and then on top of that, VGC, like, I was really into, and in 2009, right, at this point I'm in middle school, the circuit is, like, lottery based, and so I, like, trained really hard that year. I probably played more Pokemon that year than almost any other year of my life, but I did not get to, compete at the Philadelphia Regional Championships because I didn't win the lottery, essentially. So, like, my brother and my dad drove down. Neither Brendan or I got to even compete in the tournament. And then I was going to go to Nationals, and then my flight got canceled again. So I think I just had, like, the worst flight luck when I was younger. But it was funny. I wasn't, like, that bummed out by then. I was like, you know what? Whatever. I guess that's just life. And so I was denied a chance to play in 2009, which was a little bit unfortunate. Eventually finished this program, get a scholarship to go to one of the best private schools in New York, which I feel, super grateful for. And then, I go to private school, and it was a big adjustment for me. I went from, going to public school with a lot of people who were also, like, children of immigrants, a lot of other Asian Americans. Private school, I think, was a total culture shock for me. It was just, being around a lot of people who came from very different backgrounds and had, parents who are very, very high up in corporate America, for example. And so it was a big shift, but it was one like I think it took some time to getting used to, but like the level of education was incredible. The teachers there were phenomenal, and I think like the people also shaped me a lot as well. All of that is happening while I'm also still trying to play VGC, and so it was definitely really, really chaotic. But then 2010 rolls around, and that's when VGC becomes a little bit more established, right? And so I go to a regionals over in Newark, New Jersey, and back then it was actually the largest tournament of all time. There were 768 people in Masters. It was capped at that number. Also best of one single limb, and I got top 4 at that tournament. And this is when there were only 2 age divisions, so it was like you were either juniors or you were seniors. Seniors was like basically 12 plus. I was like the youngest player basically in the division. Got top 4, got a travel award to go to nationals. Brendan at this point also gets into Pokemon. I basically was like, hey, you can win money from these things, and there's not that many people competing in juniors. And so I was like, why don't I like just give you teams and see how it plays out? And so 2009, we don't really get a chance to play because of the lottery. 2010 rolls around. Brendan like takes the team that I give him and also gets top 4 at regionals. I was like, whoa, this is awesome. And so, Brendan, my brother, is of course 5 years younger as well at this point. Like I'm 12, 13. So he's like 7 or 8. So the age gap was like noticeable enough where we like didn't actually have a ton in common, and you're just in like very different stages in life. But I think Pokemon really brought us together, which was really awesome. And then, like towards the end of middle school, it was about kind of juggling, now adjusting to a new environment in this like intense prep school environment, while also trying to, get even more and more into VGC.
Wow. That was a tour de force. Absolutely incredible.
I was a little all over the place. I was like, boom, boom. So
that was such a fantastic summary. And I think that takes us now nicely into what's going to be the second Pokemon on your team joining Swampert.
Okay, number 2, I think I'll give this one to Piplup, which is my all-time favorite Pokemon. I know we're kind of following the trend of first partner Pokemon here, but Piplup, of course, was my starter from Diamond and Pearl, and Diamond and Pearl is right around like this time as well. Gen 4 VGC, Gen 5 VGC is like right around 2008 to 2012, right? And so a lot of the transformative years, of course, were played in Diamond and Pearl, specifically 2008, 2009. And Diamond and Pearl probably are my favorite games of all time because I spent so much time playing them. And that's when like I really learned like competitive was a thing. And Piplup is my all-time favorite Pokemon just because of how cute it is.
Yeah, another cute water first partner Pokemon. At this era, when Diamond and Pearl are out, are you starting now to play the games more purely for the competitive, or is that love of the base games themselves still there?
I think Diamond and Pearl was still about the base games. There was just so much you could do in the games, and I think like Wi-Fi was so cool. The like underground was really, really cool as well. And so, at this point, Pokemon was still very new to me, right? Like the only games I had played were Emerald. I think my second game was actually Coliseum and then XD, like because I had a GameCube, and those are actually some of my favorite games of all time as well. And then it was like maybe like Crystal / one of Red and Blue, and then got into Emerald. So at this point, I'm still young. I didn't play many other video games when I was a kid or growing up in general, and so I was like, it just feels like there's a lot like you can do. But at this time, this is when like competitive is becoming more of a thing as well, and so it's where the shift, I would say, starts to happen. But for a lot of the Diamond and Pearl experience, like I probably clocked like 900 hours in that game. It felt like, at least 600 or 700 of those hours were not related to competitive. It was just like playing the game for the game.
Wow. Okay. Fantastic. Well, now from there, it's time to go into high school.
All right. So, at this point, VGC is like a pretty big part of my life, right? I think in 2011, that's when like things I feel like really, really like the dial really just turned up. 2011 was, of course, Black and White. They come out, and it was a really big year in VGC as well. And it's funny, like basically, back then the way the circuit worked is you had like regionals, you had nationals, and you had worlds, right? But like you could basically only play in a couple of regionals. There was like one every weekend for like a 6 to 8 weekend stretch, and then if you did well at regionals, you'd qualify for nationals. If you did well at nationals, you'd qualify for worlds. Like that was it, right? So your season was like basically condensed into 2-3 months, and you'd only play in like 2 or 3 tournaments total, which was nice because back then also I was like focusing on school and trying to do a decent job there. But in 2011, the new games come out, and there's a regionals like quite close to where we are in Washington D.C. And so I end up going down to this regionals. My parents drive us. It's me and Brendan, and at this point there's 3 H divisions, right? Juniors, seniors, and masters. And I don't know if we really knew the game really that well, but we practice and we trained with each other. We show up to these regionals, single elimination, best of 1, close team sheet once again. And Brendan and I both go undefeated and end up winning in juniors and seniors. And the master division player you might recognize as well goes by Wolf Glick. And so there
I know that name,
yeah, I think might be a picture of. I don't know if there's actually a picture from us from that event, but yeah, basically it was crazy. Like the 3 winners of that event were Brendan, me, and Wolf, which was really cool. And that's where I got to meet Wolf for the first time. We didn't really talk very much after that event, but then became closer friends shortly after. But that was when I was like, oh my gosh, wow, like I won. Like I didn't just get like top 4 at an event. I got top 4 at this regionals in 2008, top 4 at this regionals in 2010. And in 2010, by the way, I went to U.S. Nationals and I started 4-0. I lost 3 games in a row, ended up finishing 4-3. There was one 4-3 that made it into top cut / top 16, and I was the second 4-3. So I was 17th. I bubbled out of both top cut as well as an invitation to Worlds, and that was pretty heartbreaking, honestly. Like I remember being really, really sad about it. And it was crazy because I think it was like 4 or 5 of my 7 opponents made it to top 16 as well. So I was like, wow, the fact my resistance still wasn't good enough to be that like top 4-3 is crazy. But and I ended up actually losing to the eventual national champion that year as well, Wesley Morioka. I think it was in round 6, but it was a really eye-opening experience, like playing so many great players. And so yeah, now we're in 2011. And yeah, like VGC has just kind of opened a whole new world for me and for Brendan, right? Like we both won this tournament. And then so we go to nationals and then kind of repeat the magic in nationals where Brendan gets second in juniors, I get first in seniors, and then Wolf wins in masters as well. So something was in the water in Washington, D.C. because it clearly like transferred over. And so that was a really cool experience, once again. And at that point, I remember feeling like I was on top of the world. I was like, I won regionals, I won nationals, and now I'm going to win worlds, right? Like it's got to happen. And that worlds was like heartbreaking in the sense that I like kind of bombed it. It was only 5 rounds in seniors before top cut. Round 1, that entire summer, by the way, I'm like training with Aaron Trailer, who's become one of my best friends in the Pokemon space. And the way we met each other was literally by our names both being Aaron, and sitting down for the player meeting, like we were both seated next to each other. And so he's still one of my best friends today, and we often reflect, it's like crazy, me, Aaron, Wolf, like we've known each other for such a long time, we've grown up with each other, the scene is so much bigger now, we're still so heavily involved in it, but we were just kids when this all happened. We were just a bunch of kids that love this game, love this franchise, and we're lucky enough to meet each other at the right time in the right place. But basically that entire summer I spent training with Aaron Trailer. We're practicing with each other, with our teams. Round 1, we sit down, and the first opponent that we have is each other, which is crazy, right? Like, obviously that can happen, but like, what are the odds of that? And so I think that was not a great way to start the event for either of us. And I ended up winning, but then, yeah, I ended up playing some like really good opponents across the board. I played Shota Yamamoto, who players these days probably don't know, but he's like a VGC legend. Like he was the junior division world champ way back in the day, and then his brother ended up winning junior worlds a few years later in 2014. And then in seniors, he was also crushing it. And I think like that was like a really close, intense set. And I think it was that set where I got so nervous, I actually misclicked, and like it was a combination of misclick plus like maybe a flinch or a paralysis that lost me the game. And that's when I realized I was like, wow, like nerves really can be a thing in this game as well. So in the end, I finished 2 wins, 3 losses, 17th place in seniors. And it was like 1 already felt really heartbreaking because I was like, oh, I felt like I was good enough to win the event. And 2, the team that won senior worlds was actually my team. It was basically the team that I had used at US Nationals, adapted for worlds, and Cameron Jahadi, who was also like one of the best players in that era, ended up basically taking like an adapted version. You maybe changed, I think, like 1 move. Maybe it was like Thunder Wave on Thunderous, which I wasn't running, and then won Worlds with it. So I was like, oh man, like the team that I put together was good enough to win, but I wasn't good enough. And that was like, I guess kind of the first real wake up call in VGC, right? And so it was kind of a end to a disappointing end to what was otherwise, a phenomenal season, winning regionals and nationals. But I was like, you know what, like I can win at this game, and I think that's really awesome. And then so now at this point, high school, I'm also trying to juggle academics, the school I went to was really academically rigorous, and it was very much focused on like, you know, getting you into one of the best universities in the country as well. And so like at this point I'm thinking, okay, I really want to, you know, do well in school, go to a good college. You know, I know that means a lot to my parents. At the same time, I'm also thinking about Pokemon all the time. So it was definitely tough juggling the two. And then on top of that, at school, I was also doing extracurriculars. And so I was like ran cross country, for example, ran track, did math competitions as well. So it was a lot. And on top of that, I was commuting about an hour to an hour and a half one way each day for school. So it was like on the road for like, you know, 2.5 up to 3 hours sometimes. So I always joke, I was like, yeah, I think like middle school and high school stunted my growth because I probably slept an average of like 5.5 to 6 hours back then. And I was also like stressed about school and also playing a lot of Pokemon. And I also was a procrastinator. So none of that was like a formula for good sleep. But yeah, at this point in high school, like I am trying to balance, you know, going to school and trying to do a decent job in it while also thinking about Pokemon a lot. And then 2012 rolls around, and this, you know, kind of similar to the 2011 story where it's like do well at regionals. I think I got second at regionals, and then went to nationals, won nationals again in seniors. Wolf and I won again, which was crazy. Like, and back then the way the events worked is like you would play simultaneously, and so there'd be like three TVs, and like I'm on one screen, Wolf's on another. And then I think like that year we got a lot closer actually. We actually practiced for nationals together and used very similar teams. And then for Worlds that year, I was like at summer camp. I actually didn't have a ton of time to prepare, but Wolf was building this like executor team that he was looping me in on. And I was like, I think this team seems really fun to play and use. And so I ended up bringing that to Worlds and got top 8 at Worlds then. So did better than 2011, improved on it, but still felt like there was a lot left to be desired, right? Especially after getting eliminated. That top 8 set was also crazy because I think it was like, it was a 2-0. I lost 0-2, but between the two games, only one Pokemon had been knocked out. Like both games went to timer, and it was like 4-4, 4-3, which I think is like really crazy to think about in retrospect. And then 2013 rolls around, and of course, you know, this is kind of like the infamous season. But at this point, I'm in 10th grade, and so like college and, you know, academics ramping up, really getting into VGC as well. And I have a pretty good season that year. I had just aged up to Masters, right? And so it was obviously like a big adjustment. It was stressful. But I think a lot of people were like, you know, seniors moving on to Masters, like, it's going to be tough for them. But Sejun Park, you know, who got second at Worlds in seniors in 2011, then like went to Worlds in 2012 and got top 8 at Worlds and aged up to Masters, right, in 2012. So I was like, okay, if Sejun can do it, like, you know, he is my favorite player, really of all time. Yeah, I looked up to him, still do a ton. But I was like, okay, if Sejun can do it, then I can believe in myself and I can do it. So 2013 rolls around. First regionals I go to, I get second place, which was really cool. Then end up, I think, getting top 32 at another regionals that season, and then end up actually winning a regionals at the end of the season, and going undefeated to win the tournament, which was really cool. Side fact on that tournament, it was actually held in Gillette Stadium, which is where like one of the biggest US football teams play in, which was a crazy venue and experience. So that was its own story in itself. But end up winning regionals, go to nationals, get top 16 at nationals, and so I had like really good season. But I think going into Worlds, a lot of people were still like, he's still young, you know, like, you know, I think like fringe contender for top 8. But I was like, you know, no, I don't think so. I think I'm really one of the best in this format. And so, you know, at Worlds, I obviously have, I think, the run that most people really know about, which is, you know, getting top 4, losing in that really infamous semifinals. And I think at the time I was just so happy to be there, especially because like Brendan at the time was also doing really well, right? Like I knew that Brendan made it to finals, and then I played my top 4 set. And I think obviously that set, you know, went a very chaotic way. And I think now looking back, I'm like, wow, like, you know, I was so close to winning Worlds. I didn't realize just at the time, like that could have been the moment, right? I think in my head, I was like, well, you know what? I got this far. I'll be back here again. But VGC is obviously really hard, and to make it runs that deep at Worlds in particular is really challenging, just because there's so many good players. There's a lot that needs to go your way on a given day. But at this point, you know, I get top 4 at Worlds. And then 2013 season comes to end. Auto qualify for Worlds because I get top 4 at Worlds. So now it's like 11th grade. I'm like coming up on college application season. 11th grade is a big year in the US because you're like taking your exams, you know, for college, and you're also like your grades that year matter a lot. And so I was like, okay, I can take a step back from competing a little bit because I got top 4 at Worlds. I don't have to grind the season out as much. And that's when I actually started a YouTube channel because I was like, hey, I have some downtime. There isn't really a lot of competitive VGC content on YouTube, certainly not from people that are playing at a really high level, playing at the World Championship. So I loved watching YouTube growing up, and I still do. I think especially as like an Asian American, like there wasn't a lot of Asian representation in media and in TV or even in music. I feel like at least mainstream in the US. And I was like watching a lot of Asian creators. A lot of the biggest creators on YouTube were like Asian Americans when I was growing up. And I was like, hey, it's really cool that like they can put themselves out on the internet and just like do this and have so many people come out and watch them. And so I was like, I love VGC. I want to share my love for VGC with the world. I'm just going to do this. And yeah, I think I was lucky that, like, you know, by nature of just there not being a lot of other people even doing this, and VGC like still being in its early stages, like was able to draw some traction early on and have people actually come out and watch these videos, right? And so I was like, wow, this is really fun to do on the side. And so yeah, you know, towards the end of high school is when I started the content creation stuff, and it, you know, kind of just like took off. And yeah, I never really stopped or looked back. And then all of this is happening. I'm still really stressed about like figuring out where I can get into college, what the college application process looks like. Senior year of high school rolls around, and then I end up discovering this school out in Southern California, which is like basically the complete opposite of New York where I was living. And I was like, you know what? I think this is my dream school. I really want to go here. And I apply early, and I end up getting in, which I feel really lucky for, right? So the way the college application process works in the US is like you send in your apps, you can commit to one school early. If you get into the school early, like that's it. You don't have to apply to any other schools. You're committed. If you don't get into it early, then you go through the regular process, which is like from January to March, and then I think you normally find out around April. But I had applied to this school in like November, got in December, and so that was it. Like senior year of high school, I've gotten into my dream college, the school called Claremont McKenna over in SoCal. I'm done. I don't need to worry about academics. I don't need to worry about school anymore. So that was one of the best years I think of my life, because then I could just like focus on social life and VGC. And then 2015 I played a lot of VGC as well. Ended up getting. What was it? I won a regionals at the start of the season, post Worlds 2014. Then, got top 32 at regionals, and then maybe 9th at regionals, and then 4th at US Nationals that year. And then go to Worlds where I bring Swampert and end up finishing 4-3 after starting 3-1. So at this point, like, you know, the goal of winning Worlds feels like it's slipping further and further away. I skipped 2014 there, but I also finished 4-2 that year, so I was like one game away from top cut. I think it was like 18th place maybe that I placed in, and I was like, wow, this is not easy. Like I got 3rd in my first year in Masters. I thought I would be, you know, just top cutting consistently, but the game's not like that, right? And so but all of that is to say, those years I think were really transformative, because I'm trying to balance school while also playing Pokemon. It was not easy. It was definitely not easy, especially because there was also a lot of other things going up on top. But I'm really grateful, and I think, had some of the best seasons I had, especially like 2013 and 2015, while among all this chaos. And so it's really fun to look back at.
Yeah, wow. Just so much going on all the time, and it seems like it's just a trend that's been there always in your life, really, just balancing work and education alongside Pokemon. But we'll hear more about that soon, I'm sure. But yeah, that infamous World's top 4 that you mentioned.
It was actually both paralysis and confusion. So Thunderous swaggering a Landorus at full HP with the Focus Sash. It was Thunderous, Cresselia, and Ryosuke side. I had Landorus and Cresselia, and I think it was maybe Conkeldurr in the back. And so he goes Swagger onto Landorus, and that turn I didn't even actually think about, like that as an option. I was like, oh, I think I have this one, right? Like I should be good. But he goes for Swagger. If I don't get confused there, I click Rock Slide that turn. I just knock out Thunderous. I hit the Cresselia, and even if you Ice Beam me, I have Focus Sash on Landorus. So we all kind of just hold our breath. And it was crazy because basically back then, the games were like delayed on one end. So Ryosuke reacted before I did, and he was really happy. And I was like, oh no. I could see him reacting. And so I was like, he got the confusion, didn't he? Landorus hits itself in confusion, doesn't get an attack off, and then I get hit by an Ice Beam as well. And Cresselia that turn was trying to go for a Trick Room. Also didn't get the Trick Room off either. And I think if Trick Room went up, I might have still been able to win that game. But without Trick Room, like then I just like lost all momentum in the game. So it was a huge swing. And Yeah, but that set was like messy, right? Like he had been swaggering and thunder waving all game, and so it was like I should have thought about that a little bit more on that key turn. And I think I had a pretty significant matchup advantage with Rotom Wash, honestly, being really good in the matchup. And like game 3, I didn't bring Tyranitar either, which may have been a better pick ultimately, given that I think he maybe dropped his Conkeldurr. But yeah, obviously a very infamous set in VGC history. But I think, even though I got really unlucky, I could have played better as well. And I think if I played better, then that luck wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah, and there we go. It's that mindset that has got you where you are today, and something that we could all learn so much from. And everybody, you've mentioned, Aaron, your friendship with Wolf there. I have recorded with Wolf on this podcast, so do check that out. The card will be at the end of the episode and linked in the description below. But now it's time to learn what's going to be the third Pokemon on your dream team, Aaron. So who's going to be there alongside Swampert and Piplup? All
right, third Pokemon. So many of the ones I picked, actually, I realized were from this era, but I think I'm going to go with Scizor. Scizor was very, very instrumental in some of the teams back then. And when I won Nationals in 2012, both Wolf and I decided to use Scizor. And it was really cool. You could use Swords Dance with Steel Gem. So the idea is you would get a Swords Dance off, and then with Steel Gem plus a Swords Dance boost, the +2 Bullet Punch would get a one-hit knockout onto a lot of Pokemon that didn't resist it that were common. So like Garchomp is a good example. It was also really good because you had access to Bug Bite. Bug Bite was really good into Cresselia, right? And Cresselia was one of the best Pokemon back then. And so it was cool because it wasn't like the most commonly used Pokemon, but it felt really, really good. And I think it gave us a huge edge when we won Nationals that year. And it was funny because it got to the point where Scizor was like becoming scary enough where people started to run like Hidden Power Fire, and Hidden Power Fire on Cresselia was used to also hit things like Metagross, but this was closed team sheet back in the day, so it was so stressful because you'd have Scizor into Cresselia and you'd be like, oh, well, I feel like I should be good here. But if you have a random Hidden Power Fire, then I'm just totally screwed. And I say this as someone who used offensive Cresselia with Hidden Power Fire in particular, so I've been on both ends where it's like my Scizor was getting sniped off by it, but I was also KOing other Scizors with Hidden Power Fire. But yeah, that was Pokemon that I have a lot of competitive love for, and it's just, one of my favorite ones to use competitively, especially in that era.
Amazing, and we're definitely diverging away from the cute first partner theme.
Yes.
Scizor. Great, but we will bullet punch over from there now into college.
Yes, okay, so here at this point, I competed at Worlds in 2015, right? And so it's summer of 2015, Boston, this is the end of August, and from Boston, I actually fly directly down to Southern California, where I am moving across the country. I don't really know a single person in SoCal, right? And, California life, New York life, very different from each other. So I pack my bags. I fly to Southern California, and I, basically like show up on campus at this small liberal arts school called Claremont McKenna. This is a small university in the grand scheme of things, right? Like American universities can be absolutely huge. At Claremont, there was only, I think, like 330-ish people in a grade, right? So the entire school was only around like 1,300 people. But it was a really unique experience because it was part of a consortium. So Claremont had 4 other schools that were basically all next to it. And you essentially were like going to one school as part of a larger like 5-school campus. So you could eat at any of the schools, take classes at any of the schools, and they're all connected, right? So as soon as you leave one campus, you're on to the next one. I think Claremont is a school that like a lot of people, especially from New York, didn't know about, but I like fell in love with it because I was like, wow, like first of all, getting to go to like school in California, like Southern California, everyone talks about LA, like this is cool. This is like, why would you not want to do that, right? The weather's incredible, and I visited like basically before I even applied, and I was like, yeah, this place is incredible. Like I have to come here. And so it was obviously very nerve-wracking moving across the country, especially because all my best friends that I grew up with or went to high school with, like they kind of stayed on the East Coast, right? But I was like one of the only people to move out to the West Coast, so it was a big life change. But I was very fortunate as well, where I like met still some of my best friends today, probably within the first week of the program, the first week of starting. And so it was, like a very, very transformative time. And at this point, I'm still playing VGC, still competing. But 2016 is like, a important year in the story because at this point I'm still, competing, but I had always wanted to commentate tournaments, right? And so my goal was to qualify for Worlds that year. I won regionals like in February in Anaheim, and ended up qualifying for Worlds. Great. And so I was going to compete at US Nationals that year. And right before U.S. Nationals, I get a call, and it's a call from Chris Brown, the guy that basically runs the competitive circuit at Pokémon for VGC. And Chris was like, "Hey, someone isn't able to commentate this year. We need someone else on the team. I know you expressed interest before. Do you want to join us?" And so I was like, "Oh, okay, sure." I hadn't really been, practicing a lot for nationals that year anyway, and since I had qualified for Worlds, and so I was like, "Well, okay, I've always wanted to do this thing, so why not? Let's go and do it." So I ended up committing to commentating U.S. Nationals that year, and it was, phenomenal experience. And the team back then was just a lot of my closest friends as well. For example, like Scott and Evan, like the OGs. We also had Rizzo, of course. And so that was fun. I remember Ray and I at one point were just riffing, trying to kill time between the games. And it was cool because, Ray is also like one of my closer VGC friends. And, he's obviously like everyone looked up to him, especially in that older era. Like it was Ray, right? Like he was the 3-time world champion, and so it was really cool to be able to work with him as well. And I think that's what I realized. I was like, yeah, I really like commentating. This is awesome. I want to do more of it. So that summer, obviously, I had to decide between commentating or competing at Worlds, but I decided, you know what, I think I'm gonna do this thing. I'm gonna commentate. So I gave up the decision to play that year. And lo and behold, in my first Worlds that I commentate, I get to commentate Wolf winning the entire tournament, which was really crazy. I think it also sparked some drive in me to get back into competing because I was so inspired by it. And then so 2017 rolls around, and I decide, okay, now I'm gonna shift back maybe into playing a little bit more. So then 2017 rolls around, then I end up qualifying for Worlds again. I won Portland regionals that year. But I didn't do super well internationally. That's when ICs became a thing, and I missed day 2 at the ICs that I went to. And that summer, I don't know, I didn't put a lot of focus on preparing for Worlds, and I tried, but didn't get very far, and I just completely bombed out of day 1 at Worlds. And that's when I was like, man, competing really is hard, and the highs are some of the highest highs you can feel in life from when you do well in competition, but the lows are also some of the lowest lows. And at this point, I'm like, well, commentary is also a thing that I can do, and I really love it, and I always enjoy doing it. And I think 2017 in particular, the World's Finals that year was really, really awesome. And I was like, oh man, if I'm not going to be playing and doing well, I wish I could be narrating that instead, right? And so I think at this point I have a big shift in my head of whether or not I want to even still compete as much. I think all of this is also layered on with the fact that I'm in college, it's classic broke college student. I'm like, wow, if I'm going to spend a couple $100s to go to these regionals and not even do well, what's the point, right? I'd rather spend that money on something that brings me guaranteed fun. And so basically my mindset was okay, if I'm going to compete, I got to take it seriously. And if I'm not going to take it seriously, I think my time is better spent either making content or of course commentating events. And so 2017 at this point, it's middle of college is when I take a step back and decide, you know what, I think I'm going to lean more into the commentary stuff and focus less on competing. So then 2018, 2019 roll around, and I'm not playing in tournaments at all. I'm only commentating tournaments. I was, lucky enough to do, World's Finals 2016, 2018, 2019. And so a lot of, really transformative, important years in commentary for me in that era. All that is on top of college. College is way less stressful than high school. I was having the time of my life, met incredible friends, and the institution was incredible. And also not very, I would say, competitive. I think East Coast culture in New York in particular is very competitive and cutthroat. West Coast culture, a lot more laid back, a lot more collaborative. People are just more chilled out on average. But I was still around really smart, motivated people, which I think was great. But I did a 5-year program during this time. So I finished my years in college, or my first 3 years at this school called Claremont. And then I basically go to another institution in New York called Columbia. And the idea is it's a dual degree bachelor program where you basically double major. You do 1 degree at the first school and then another degree at the second school. And so, I end up going to Columbia after finishing my 3 years at Claremont, and it was a complete whirlwind where now I'm moving back to New York. I'm closer to my family, but it's this really academically rigorous institution. And suddenly it's school just became way more stressful. And I remember at one point being I might fail a class for the first time. I have no idea what's going on in some of these high level math classes. And so, at this point, I think 2019 to 2020-ish, Pokemon was not the biggest part of my life during that time because I was just like very much focused on like trying to not fail, like graduate and finish school. But yeah, it was a very transformative experience, like being able to live in Southern California, then going to New York and moving back there. And then of course, COVID happens. This is really, really chaotic. And so then, everyone's just kind of like staying at home. I'm like isolated by myself for a couple of months as well, which was a really wild experience. And then at that point, I'm like, well, there's nothing else to do. So I guess I'll play more VGC or like make more content during this time. But yeah, that basically kind of wraps up that 5-year period during college.
Wow. And so you lean more into Pokemon and content at that point, but you're still doing the content alongside in the stuff you've been talking about there, but just to a lesser extent?
Yeah, I'd say like 18, 19, 20, like before pre-Sword and Shield, I think it was like, I wasn't competing very much. I don't think I was like super into making the content either. I was still doing it a little bit, but I was mainly just like, my main involvement at that time was commentary. But then of course, Sword and Shield comes out, brand new game, huge boom, right? So then that's when I like really start getting back into things. And I think, what did that come out? Was it early 2020 or
late
end of 2019?
I think.
That's right, yeah. So at that point, it was like it was my last year of college. I already had like a job offer in the beginning of college with basically my dream company, which was awesome. And so I was like, okay, I don't have to worry about academics or school at all, right? Like grades don't really matter at this point. So I was like, okay, then Sword and Shield comes out. Then I spent a lot of effort making content. And then with COVID, I was like, well, now there's really nothing to do. So I'm definitely going to make more content. And so I lean more into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Well, that makes sense. And now it's time to learn what's going to be Pokemon number 4 alongside Piplup, Swampert, and Sizzle.
All right. I'm going to go with Mega Mawile. This was one of my favorite Mega Evolutions, and I think I won, was it 2 different regionals with it, now I'm thinking about? Like, it was post-Worlds 2014, Mega Mawile on this, what I think is the best team I've ever created, which was like Gothitelle, Mawile, Ludicolo, Salamence, Rotom Heat, Hariyama. Super good, kind of this like anti-meta team where you can trap Pokemon in with Gothitelle. Salamence was really good as a pick that year because Hydreigon was everywhere, so Salamence could just like outspeed Hydreigon. You trap it in with Gothitelle and you just one-shot it, which was awesome. And then it was dual Intimidate with Salamence and Mega Mawile, so you could swap Intimidates in a format that does have a lot of physical attackers like Kangaskhan, obviously. And Mega Mawile was a big piece of that. And then in 2016, I won a regionals, and I think that team was like Mega Salamence, Mega Mawile, Dual Primal, Smeargle, Bronzong, if I remember correctly. And Mawile, I don't know, just such a strong offensive piece on both of those teams. And so I actually, like, I was always like, oh, I love Mega Mawile. It was a big part of that 2014 team. I kind of forgot that it was also used in 2016. And so, yeah, it was definitely a big piece of some of the teams that I'd used to win events back then.
Fascinating. So we've got a couple of water types on your team so far and a couple of steel types, and of course Piplup eventually evolves into a part steel type, so definite preference for some
key
types
trends
coming out. Yeah, exactly, so far. But we're going to move from there now into grad school.
Okay, yeah, so at this point, adult life, I am working, and so yeah, I'm my after finishing college, like basically for me throughout all my life, I was always like, I really enjoyed doing Pokemon stuff. I also really want to do stuff, outside of Pokemon as well. And so the first job I had coming out of college was at a firm called Axiomatic Gaming, and this group is like the ownership group of a big pro esports team called Team Liquid. So, obviously I had known about esports, especially like competing in the games, but Pokemon wasn't like, considered like a traditional esport, right? But I loved watching League of Legends. There were some documentaries that Riot Games made that made me realize like, wow, this is really, really cool. And like, it's so awesome following the stories of these like competitive players and just seeing other people who had like competitive drive for something at a really high level that was also a video game. It's like a lot easier to relate to, right? And so I was lucky enough to work for this company called Axiomatic, and this is the ownership group of Team Liquid, like one of the most notable esports teams in the world. And it was like the best first job ever, honestly. Like my coworkers were absolutely incredible. Like they were such, and are still today, like incredible mentors, and honestly just like really fantastic people as well. I think like you can meet a lot of good people, or a lot of people that are really good at work, but might not necessarily be the best mentors or the best like people to nurture and really help you grow. But for me, I think like, yeah, my first coworkers who were experienced and had been working for a good bit of time were incredible in both like helping me grow and learn, as well as just like, yeah, being awesome. And the job was, really fun. I think I was doing a mix of like looking at investment work within the gaming space, right? Because this group, Axiomatic, had also invested in some other gaming companies like, Epic, for example, and Niantic. And so it was just a really unique experience. And then like the other half of the work was trying to, help out Team Liquid with whatever strategic initiatives like they could kind of throw me into. And so, yeah, I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and it was, I think, I feel so grateful to have had an opportunity like that really come up, because it is quite rare, I think. And it was like, one, working in an industry that I was really passionate about, and two, also working with people that I really, really absolutely adored and loved. And so that was awesome. And while I was finishing up undergrad, by the way, I applied to grad school, and I applied because it was COVID and I literally had nothing better to do. And I was like, well, I just took the exam for this, and I always thought about maybe going to grad school. And so I was like, might as well. And there are these programs that are called like deferred programs where you get in undergrad. Normally people that go to business school, you work for like 2 to 5 years and then you go. And you normally apply, after working for a few years. But in this time, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just apply, because there are these programs for undergrad students and they reserve spots for you if you get in basically later down the road. So I applied during COVID. Like I said, not really much to do. All it was like waking up, make content, and, tune into a class online. And then that was basically it. So I sent out a couple of applications to a bunch of schools. But of course, I think like the two schools that I really wanted to go to were Harvard and Stanford. And they're two of the best business schools, right? And also just like really incredible institutions. And I end up getting into Stanford, which was kind of like my dream school, especially for just, I don't know, grad school and like colleges and all these applications. It's like acceptance rates are so low, like you never know who's reading your application, right? And how things will go when they look at your profile. But I got in, and so I knew I was like, okay, well, this is my dream school. Like, it's going to be such a unique experience. There's so many incredible, smart people, leaders of their industries at a place like this. And so I was like, you know what? I'm definitely going to go. So I worked for a few years, then decided, all right, now it's time to go. And basically after 2 years of working, go to business school. And I was there from 2022 to 2024. And this is in Northern California. So then, I'm at this point, I'm like jumping all back and forth. Like I was in Southern California for school, then moved to New York for school, then moved to Southern California for work, and now I moved to Northern California. And it was also just, an incredible time. And Scarlet and Violet, of course, comes out right when I'm there as well. And so I remember like November 2023, it was like Thanksgiving break here in the US, and a lot of people travel or go back home to see their families. And I was like, I'm just going to stay on campus and I'm just going to grind content out. And I think in like the month of December, when Scarlet and Violet came out, I think I made like 27 videos in 30 days, which might be a record for me. And so that was really crazy. But yeah, business school is awesome. Like, for those that don't really know much about it, it's like a place for you to really focus on, I think I'd say you're developing your career, meeting people as well. The meme is like networking, but to me, it's like, it's one of the last times in life that I think you'll be in an environment around so many other people as an adult where you can like naturally make friends and spend a lot of time with them. And at Stanford, it was just like around truly some of the most incredible people in the world doing like incredible things, career wise, building companies, people that are just so smart and ambitious. And there's, incredible people coming to speak on campus all the time. A lot of, just really valuable experiences there. And so, but it was kind of a whirlwind. I think it goes by really, really quickly, and I feel like I blinked and it was over. But at this time, Scarlet and Violet, is obviously really blowing up as well, and so I'm still doing a lot of content stuff. And I realized like I still kind of want to compete a little bit, and then so I go to a regionals in Vancouver. Like that was my first Scarlet and Violet tournament, and ended up getting top 4. And I was like, okay, wow, like I know it's been a long time since I played. It's been a long time since I've done well at an event, but maybe this is something I still do basically. And so I think in grad school is then kind of getting back to the swing of balancing commentary, competing, as well as making content and trying to find a good line for all of that, right? And then finished grad school last year. And I was like, you know what? I want to compete at Worlds again. I haven't played in Worlds since 2017. And so I qualified for Worlds, and I was like, I'm going to spend the summer actually really giving it my all and, training for it. So Aaron, Wolf, and I actually like kind of boot camped for 2 weeks, which was really cool. We were in this like unique stage where like Wolf does content full time, so he's got the time and flexibility. Aaron just finished his grad school program. I finished my grad school program. Yeah, and so we were like, when else in our lives can we just like go, take 2 weeks and like go do this thing? And so we boot camped together, which was a really unique experience. I felt really good for Worlds this last year, honestly. Like I think it, you want to go into Worlds thinking that you're good enough to potentially win the entire thing. Like if you want to win Worlds, I think you need that mentality. And obviously only one person gets to win, but I was like, I think I'm at least among the pool I can win this year. But yeah, the run I think started off really well. Started 4-0. Got to even play Seijun on stream, which was incredible. But then went 1-3 in the last 4 games and ended up finishing 5-3. So didn't make day 2, and it was pretty crushing, honestly. But I think I was like, hey, I picked the right team, right? Like Michael Kelschel almost ended up winning Worlds with it. And I think that team actually had a really good matchup into Arabega Miraidon, which won Worlds. And Aaron had spent the entire summer on it. And I was like, partially why I picked Zamazenta for Worlds was because of its matchup into the Arabega team. And so, yeah, I like have no regret about the team choice. And I think it's like 2 of the 3 losses I had felt, I wouldn't say unwinnable, but would have been really difficult to win. Like one was against Dondozo, which was like literally the biggest nightmare for Zamazenta. Another one was against Riley Factura in round 8, who was using Miraidon, but had a lot of like weird things like Ghost Terra Miraidon. And then he also had Focus Ash Wims, Mystic Water on Ursh. And all of those basically just made the matchup like significantly more difficult. But the one loss that I regret a lot about, I think, was like round 7, where it was up against Lunala. And I didn't have a lot of Lunala experience, but my team absolutely had the tools to win that one. But that's how Worlds goes, right? Like you're going to run into bad matchups, and you got to figure out either how to beat those bad matchups or win all your other games that are not the bad matchups. And so fell short, but I also was like, even though I didn't make it to day 2, like I don't feel like I was like that far off. And yeah, I don't know. There's still some spark in me to compete at some point again. But I think, you know, I'm leaving the world, like that whole experience with no regrets, even though the finish wasn't nearly as good as I would have hoped for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, it's just a testament to your mindset of looking for constant growth and improvement and taking the positives away. Was that the first time that you'd have played against Seijun Park?
In an official tournament, yeah, which is crazy because, you know, we obviously came from the same era, like the 2011, 2012 era.
Yeah. So, I mean, especially because that match was on stream, just give us a snapshot of how that felt.
It was incredible, man. It was like, first of all, like I was telling you earlier, right? Like Seijun, this is like my favorite player. Like,
exactly.
So many of the ideas that I was using back then were inspired by Seijun, whether it be like offensive Cresselia, Leopard Breloom, I won regionals with, that undefeated one that I was talking about earlier. And it was, just such a unique experience. And it was cool because I was like, well, Seijun's also back. Like, here we are, both of us, after like taking a lot of time off from VGC, like playing on the world stage in front of everyone. And so it was exhilarating. And obviously he brought Pachirisu. I'm really proud about how I played that set. It was like, you know, even though Worlds overall didn't go super well, like I can look back at that set and be like, I think I played basically perfectly in that set. And I haven't played super well on stream, actually, in a lot of the stream games that I've had. Like, I streamed for a bunch of win-and-ins for, like, regionals, and I think EUIC, and I lost to in like a couple of those matches, right? And so I think at some point I was like, oh, maybe, I don't know, like the stream curse, it's really scaring me. But yeah, it felt so awesome to play Seijun, you know, like someone that I have looked up to and look up to still today, and be able to show a good performance as well. So I'm like, yeah, even though Worlds overall, like, you know, still a little sad at how it ended, I'm glad at least there was this one really key memory that I can take away from.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And actually, going back to an earlier point of your story, that call up to commentate, totally out the blue, that tournament, it was Nationals, wasn't it, you were commentating there? So when you were commentating, was it like, do you feel like you immediately adapted to it? Do you feel like it just felt like a natural fit?
Yeah, honestly, yes, I think so. It obviously, you know, it can feel a little bit weird, like working with people that maybe you haven't worked with before. But I think for me, it was a really smooth transition because the commentators that were already working for the company were literally like some of my best friends that I knew from the space. And so I think commentating with people that you're naturally friends with, if they like, one is already just a lot easier, and then they were obviously very good commentators, or they're still commentating today, and so the transition was 10 times easier because of that. I think it's way hard. It would have been way harder if it's like, oh, I didn't know these people, I'm working with people that like I've just never met before, but it was, one, like, I love Pokemon, I love talking about it, and two, I'm working with people who I also, you know so well, and so I honestly felt like it was a really smooth transition, and that's partially probably what made me want to keep doing it.
That was wonderful. And now it's time to discover what's going to be the 5th Pokemon on your dream team alongside Swampert, Piplup, Scizor, and Mega Mawile.
All right. Well, I was talking about Seijun earlier and Liepard, and so I'm going to go with Liepard on this one, which I think kind of broke the 2013 metagame when it was first introduced. Like, people just didn't really know how to play against it, and Liepard plus Breloom was like this nasty lead combination where you could fake out Spore. Liepard got access to, Prankster, and so you could use like Encore, for example, which was really nasty. So it's like, if you try to protect in front of my fake out, then you just get Encore. But if you don't, then you get hit by fake out and Spore. And then it could even run Foul Play to deal damage as well. You could even swagger your opponent, then Foul Play them for more damage, which was kind of nasty. But yeah, that I think was a Pokemon that didn't see a ton of play, but taking it to a first place finish at regionals was really cool. And it was like keeping up with the meta and realizing, wow, this is something that's doing well. It's something that some top players have discovered, but hasn't really broken out yet. And then bringing it to regionals and winning with it felt really awesome. So yeah, that one holds a special place in my heart too.
Wonderful. And just to unpack a couple of things you said there, Foul Play, that's a move that uses the target's attack stat against it. Swagger boosts the target's attack stat, but also confuses it, so if they hit themselves in confusion, they're doing more damage. And then, of course, Foul Play stacks with that as well, doing more damage there. Fake Out means that the target's unable to act for that turn, they flinch, and Spore puts Pokemon to sleep. So yeah, all a bunch of nasty things, but we're happy for you, Aaron, that you were running it and doing well with it. Great. And now, from there, of course, it's time to talk about today.
So yeah, finished grad school. I think I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do post grad school, which is funny because people go to business school to figure out what they want to do with their lives. But I, had only worked for a few years and loved my last job and was thinking about going back into the gaming space. And I think long term, still interested in going back, but decided I wanted to try something a little bit new and something fast paced. And so I ended up in consulting, which is like, it's funny, it's kind of like a meme, but it's like one of the most typical industries for people to go into post business school. I wasn't even really entertaining the idea of it that much, to be honest, but I met basically a partner at the office that I'm currently working at who is not only incredible from like a mentorship and like from just how smart he is, but he also actually follows VGC, which I think is like the coolest thing, and like knows about it, right? And I was like, it's really rare to work for people that can understand like the Pokemon part of my life and understand how important it is to me. And so yeah, it's been a couple of months so far. It's definitely been a really unique experience. Moved to a new city once again, so I'm actually living in Chicago right now, which I have not really spent much time in before, but feel like I'm checking off a lot of the major US cities at this point, in New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Chicago. But I think it's been very much a new life adjustment. I had a couple of months between finishing grad school and starting work, and so that was really cool, where I was just living in New York. And from the months of like September through December, it was cool. It was like pseudo doing Pokemon full time, not like putting a ton of time into it, but also being able to commentate tournaments and still make content. And it was really awesome being able to do that. And so I think sometimes people ask me, they're like, oh, like, would you ever do it full time? And I think my answer used to be like, definitely not. Now I'm like, if there's a world where things like completely take off to the point where I want them to, then like maybe. But I'm just very grateful to be able to like do this on the side and like get a lot of fulfillment from a hobby. And, it's cool to even make any amount of money from it. Not that it's about the money, obviously, but I'm very grateful for all of that as well. And so I don't take it for granted. But yeah, these days really just now trying to figure out a cadence, a good balance between working as well as, keeping involved in Pokemon. I think I've definitely not made as much content as I would have liked to in the recent months, but I think, at this point we're also towards the end of Scarlet and Violet. So like, come champions, like I have so many ideas in my head. There's so many things that I want to do to really take things to the next level. And like, that's the next big thing I'm like really, really excited for. But I think right now, I feel like my, life in Pokemon comes in like ebbs and flows. And right now it's very much like not very, like Pokemon's not a very big priority, but I still want it to be at some point. And I know like, Champions is probably just going to unlock an entire new box that and will be another like really big stage of my life. But for now, it's like a little bit less involved in Pokemon, but I know that I still wanted to, be very, very heavily involved moving forward.
Frankly, the fact that you've been able to keep the content going at all alongside everything else you've been doing is a bit of a miracle. And just it requires so much, obviously, time management, but also just you must reach the end of some long days and think, oh, I could really do with just a night off. But no, I am going to get another video out. And so on behalf of the entire community, Aaron, thank you so much for working so hard and for making the game so much more accessible, so much more fun, and just putting all the time into it that you have.
Thank you, man. No, I really appreciate that. I think it's crazy to see like where VGC is nowadays, and it's crazy to think that like this still feels like the start. Like there's still so much potential for it, and so I'm grateful to it's such a wonderful community. I'm grateful for the people that continue to come out and watch, and I'm like, wow, it's crazy that people will really like sit down and watch like an hour and a half video of mine, and like it's not even edited really, it's just me playing games on the ladder, like. And so I'm really, really grateful in particular for all the viewers that have either stuck along throughout all the years or joined recently, or maybe watch at some point throughout the years. It's it's once again like something I don't take for granted.
Yeah, and just to unpack Pokemon Champions there, a game that we know is some kind of competitive focus on the video game of Pokemon, but we don't know all the details about it yet as of the time of recording. I'm sure, in years to come, we'll look back on this very chat, Aaron, and think, how ignorant and naive we were as to what was on the horizon. But Pokemon Champions is very exciting. So we'll see what form that takes, but now it's time to round out this Dream Team, Aaron. What's going to be Pokemon number 6?
Number 6. All right. I think in the spirit of talking about Scarlet and Violet, I might go with Mousehold here. I think it just it was just so cute. I haven't brought it to a tournament, and I haven't played a ton in Scarlet and Violet in general. But I don't know. It's just so awesome in design, and to your point, like the fact it can be both offensive and defensive, I think like it really makes it stand out. So I just absolutely adore it. So we'll go with Mousehold here.
Mousehold, I think it's such a wonderful way of wrapping up your story that started so heavily with this theme of family, and that's always been there. And of course, that tied in with the theme of education, the fact that the job that you're doing now and what your parents wanted for you, prioritizing that education side of things. So I think Mousehold is such a wonderful way to round it out in the current era, of course, the Generation 9, where Mousehold was introduced. And this means, Aaron, that your complete Dream Team is Swampert, Piplup, Scizor, Mega Mawile, Liepard, and Mousehold. And now I have to ask you, if you were to choose one of these Pokemon to be your partner Pokemon, which would it be?
It's got to be Piplup, man.
Piplup, you have the honor of being Aaron Zheng's partner Pokemon. I mean, again, similar to the question I asked you about Mudkip before, what do you think it was about Piplup that spoke to you?
It was just cute, man. I think, honestly, that was it. I was like, he looks cute. Like, he looks... If I could pick one of these in real life, it would be Piplup out of Piplup. Sorry, Chimchar. Sorry, Turtwig. But it's Piplup. And so that was it. Just pure vibes.
Yeah, fair enough. And I love that it was vibes that took you all the way to this point. Still your favourite Pokemon to this day. Now, slightly different kind of question for you, Aaron. If you were a Pokemon, what do you think you'd be?
Oh, my goodness. That's a good one. Oh, wow. I feel like I always get asked this, and I don't have a good answer. I need something that's like... chill, but also like fun.
I could definitely see the water or ice type for you.
Yeah, exactly. But it's hard for me to like pinpoint a specific one. So I'm trying to think like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, would you have a secondary typing, and what would that be?
Maybe water flying. So then I'm like, but then I'm not a Gyarados, like that's a little too intense. So.
It's true. Water and fly. I mean, you could be a Swanna or a Cramorant. That's
okay. Swanna's cool. It's kind of majestic, yeah. But see, it's like none of those speak to me, even though I like the typing combo, So
yeah,
it's so interesting.
Yeah. Or maybe like, I don't know, there's water, but then there's the real hard working element to you, and I'm trying to work out what what that would be. Is that like a B-Barrel, maybe? I can see it was a water.
Okay, I like it, yeah.
Kind of goofy, chill as well. Yeah. B-Barrel. I quite like that. But what do you all think? Do you agree that of all the Pokemon, Aaron would be a B-Barrel? Let us know in the comments. We'd be fascinated to read. And speaking of you all, now time for your community questions. I posted online, as I always do, asking for questions from the community for Aaron. Thanks so much for submitting so many questions. I apologise that I won't be able to feature all of them, and I apologise if I mispronounce any of your names or handles. But to kick things off, this question from... I'm not even going to try and pronounce this, just going to read it out. NYXIIE_TVII. I realise you've submitted a question before, and thanks so much for your interest in the show. How do you juggle competing and commentating in the same season? Do formats or events factor into your drive to choose which one?
It's a good question. I think, formats definitely play a big role. It's like if I'm enjoying the format, then I'd probably want to compete in it a little bit more. I think it actually ends up being often more like where I am in life outside of Pokemon, where it's like this season, for example, I haven't competed at all because I like moved to a new city, started a new job, and I'm just like, I just don't like have the time to invest in wanting to compete. I mean, I could, right? But like, then, like I said, I don't want to play unless I like feel like I can at least like put in a lot of effort, and it's just hard to put in that effort when there's a lot else going on in life. Whereas like Worlds last year, probably not my favorite format, but I competed because like I had more time, right? So it was like the availability of time. So I think the format definitely does play a big factor, but maybe actually more importantly, it's how much time I think I have to dedicate towards competing specifically. Because if I don't have much time, like commentary is something I can do without a ton of time investment, but competing is something that like I only think these days I want to do if I can put in a lot of time into it.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. Thank you very much for that question. Next question now, and we can't record this episode without bringing up the topic of music, Aaron, because I know you are such a music fan. Question from Raggy Mali, and again, I apologise for any pronunciations there. Ragimali. What music do you have on repeat?
Let's see. I'm gonna pull up my Spotify right now and pull up the on repeat. I'm a big live music lover, and so I got to see Lady Gaga a few months ago, and her new show is like unbelievable. It's never seen anything like it. But one of my favorite artists, my most played song right now is called "Start a Fire" by Above and Beyond. They're like this trance group, legendary electronic artists. I also saw them at Coachella and like absolutely adore them. But let's see some other songs I can name from this playlist. Ash by Le Seraphim, topical for Pokemon. Trust by Rebecca Black. I think people don't realize that Rebecca Black has like made a full comeback and she's making incredible music. The Robots by Kraftwerk, Garden of Eden by Lady Gaga, Wake Me Up by The Weeknd, Nobody Knew by the Marias, and Summertime Blue by Chris Lake and Sammy Verji. But I listened to a little bit of everything, so that was a mix of pop, EDM, and K-pop.
Yeah. If you were to choose one genre to be your favorite, what would it be?
Probably electronic, honestly. I think it's there's just so many different subgenres even within electronic, and it's like you can run to it, you can dance to it, and it's as like a live music lover. I think I always love seeing like the artists that break like the boundaries of what music can be, and I think so much of that happens in electronic specifically.
Great. Well, thank you very much indeed for that question. Now, next question, really interesting one here from David Jacobson, D Jacob SE. Online. Who are some of your favorite players to commentate?
Ooh, okay. That's a good one. I've only done one of Brendan's games, but I think Brendan for sure. That was if I had to pick the set that I like loved commentating the most, it was that specific set. Winning in Worlds 2018. He's up against David Kotesh, also an incredible player, an incredible team builder, and I got to commentate him, winning obviously and making it through. And so I think the question is really interesting, actually, because I'm not sure how many people have commentated more than just like a couple of games max, right? Because it's like each tournament you go to, you maybe commentate like 6-7 games total. And so it's like you multiply that by all the years I've been doing commentary. And even then it's maybe like, I don't know, 150-ish games. I think Wolf is like an easy answer, right? Because he always plays so phenomenally well and like he always brings really cool teams. And obviously it's such an incredible player. But I'm trying to think like who else that I've been able to commentate like multiple times. It just doesn't happen that frequently, quite frankly, because it's like you have to be like at the right time, at the right place, essentially. But naturally, I think like the people that I am friends with, like it's fun. But obviously, I try to be like as unbiased as possible when I'm in the commentating booth. But yeah, like Aaron Trailer, I think always really really fun as well. But I'm trying to think outside of those, like who are the players that I've really enjoyed commentating the most like this season? Like honestly, Nicholas Morales in regionals finals, like that was a treat. I think like the newer players, like Justin Tang, also a good example, right? Like really really cool to be able to commentate people that are like just starting out on their VGC journey, but like absolutely crushing it and like beating all the veterans as well. And so like some of those regional champs from the recent years are ones that jump to my mind as well.
Yeah. Really interesting list of names there. Thank you for that question. Now, final question from Mysterious Stranger. Obviously, you have a history with Wolf, your friendship, and Wolf has his signature Perish Trap mode of playing. Do you have a signature style that's comfortable for you?
I don't think so, honestly. I feel like I'm kind of a jack of all trades. Like it's less about the style and more about like what do I think is good. Like I'd say a lot of my earlier success was from identifying things that weren't like super common in the metagame, but would give you a big edge, right? So like Scizor, Rotom Wash, Liepard, Mega Mawile. Mega Mawile was actually pretty common, so that one I wouldn't count. But like Gothitelle, like Hariyama, right? Like a lot of the winning teams that I had were using Pokemon that like had a significant edge against certain common meta Pokemon. And so in some ways they were anti-meta, but it wasn't like they were like 0% usage either, right? But it was using teams that I thought like people were like not super well prepared for, because there was like one or two pieces that really could catch people off guard. Like when I top cut regionals in 2022 is with like, Choice Scarf Groudon with Bulldoze and Weakness Policy Solgaleo. And then when I top cut regionals in Vancouver in 23, it was with Ground Terra Assault Vest Baxcalibur, right? Which like no one was really using either. And so I think it's less of a style, but more so like I really, really like finding small things, like one Pokemon that people I know are just not going to be very prepared for, that I think have a really good edge into the metagame.
It makes a lot of sense given the content that you do, which surveys a whole variety of teams and finding the niche and how to play with them. Just different ways of playing the game. Well, thank you very much for all those questions there. If you'd like to submit a question for a future guest on Chazingdra Chats, you can find my socials at Chazingdra, X, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Of course, that's where I post the questions for callouts. I would love to hear what you would love to hear. So then, Aaron, we've heard a lot about you up to now, but what's next for you?
We'll see, man. I think I'm definitely right now wondering where things will go with champions. Kind of my goal in my head right now is like I want to elevate my content for sure. I've been doing the same stuff for years, right? Not really highly edited, just me doing battle videos. It's grown a lot, obviously, but I think there's so much more that can be done. And I think with champions, we're going to have a huge new wave and influx of players. And so right now I'm thinking about like all the content that I can do with champions. Like how do I make it more accessible, right? Like I want to keep doing the stuff that I'm doing. That's never going to stop, the long battle videos. But I also want to think about how I can, do things for maybe like, the framing of it is like, what if I had a friend who wanted to get into VGC but doesn't have the time to watch, an hour video? How can I make content that's like more catered to them? And so that's just one thing I'm thinking about. For now, this season's very much been focused on commentaries. I do like really have an itch to compete. I just like, once again, only want to compete if I can really like put in the time for it. And so it's not going to be this season, especially with it coming to an end. But, I think next year, I have no idea when Champions comes out, so that's like a big question mark. But I think, once I feel a little bit more settled after moving to a new city, a new job, it'll be probably getting back more into competing once again, still commentating events, and then trying to go full steam on content, especially when Champions comes out. That's kind of the short term in my head right now.
Well, we can't wait to see where it takes you. And final question for you, Aaron. Looking back from now, very well-established Pokemon commentator, competitor, creator, all the way back to the young Aaron, who saw all their friends playing Pokemon, picked up Pokemon Emerald, and the rest is history. What advice would you give to that young you?
That's a really good question, man. I think don't be afraid of failure and know that there's so many ups and downs, and like life is really about taking in all of it. I think it's, especially as a competitor, right? Like the highs are so high, like I was saying, but the lows are so low. But I think in order to really get the most out of the highs, you need to feel the lows as well, right? And that's something I'm trying to remind myself even today, where it's like, I played at Worlds last year, I put in my a lot and really my all, right? And I didn't do nearly as well as I would have liked results-wise, but that's part of competition, and that's what makes it so fun, but also so difficult, right? And I think that advice could be applied to life as well. So just take it easy, take it one step at a time, and just enjoy the journey, because, there's stuff that's in your control and there's stuff that's out of your control. But that's what I would tell him.
Really wonderful advice. You cannot have the rough without the smooth. Well, thank you so much, Aaron. And the chat does not end there, because we'll be getting into Aaron's Rapidash round, 15 or so minutes of bonus questions that Aaron has not prepared for. And there's, as always, so many more things I want to take a deeper dive into. The origins of Aaron's username, Cybertron. Top 3 artists that Aaron has. Favorite teams that Aaron's used on Road to Ranked, his online series. Advice to aspiring casting creators. There's so many more. If that would be of interest to you, then you can become a YouTube channel member for all sorts of perks beyond access to 4 bonus videos per month, or you can find them individually on my Patreon. Fundamentally, really appreciate the fact that you've watched or listened to this episode in its entirety, but if you'd like to hang out with me and Aaron for a little bit longer, then that option is available to you. The link is in the description below. And Aaron, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been wonderful just to hang out, and as I said, feels long overdue, and just get more of an insight, so thank you.
Thank you, man, and truly, so excited to see how your career continues to flourish, and I'm really eager to inevitably work together, so keep up the good work, man.
Thank you so much, Aaron. It means a huge amount. And if people want to keep up with you online, where can they find you?
Cybertron VGC, just across the board.
Cybertron VGC, and that's our YouTube spiel from this side of things. If you've enjoyed, everybody, once more, please do like and subscribe. Would mean a huge amount. Drop a comment. Aaron, as with all my guests, has given us so much food for thought. We'd love to know what you think, and if any of his Pokemon picks time with any of your own. 60 episodes of the podcast at this point. This is the 60th episode of the show, so plenty more content to get involved in. As I said, Wolf Glick has been on the show, plenty more competitors. Justin Tang, you mentioned there as well, Aaron, I've had him on, and beyond as well. Just casual Pokemon players, Pokemon trading card game players and casters, Pokemon Go players and casters, Pokemon Unite, You name it, there's bound to be something for everyone. Hashtag 6 Pokemon 1 Life Story to spread the word about the show. Plenty more content on the channel as well. Vlogs of the events I cast, silly Pokemon flavoured comedy skits. I stream competitive, casual shiny hunting as well as Nuzlocke. Episodes of this podcast drop every Wednesday. I've got my Discord community link below as well. Come and hop into Chazingra's Chocolate Factory. It'd be a pleasure to see you there. So, if you're not joining us over on Patreon, then it's goodbye from Aaron.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
And it's goodbye from me. See you next time on Chazingdra Chats, where there'll be another 6 Pokemon, 1 Life Story.